We thought we'd roll out a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. Music.
Inter.
Worldwide. Wide.
Inter.
Worldwide.
Hello, welcome to an edition of the White Podcast. Today, I'm super excited. We have a great guest. Zach Lowy is here with us. Hi, Zach. How are you?
Hi, it's great to be on the podcast. Very excited to speak about Inter season as well as their ongoing Europa League campaign. Yeah, very excited.
So, for whoever doesn't know Zach, he's the co-creator of Breaking the Lines, and he writes also for Football Index, Nueve Medio, and L'Ultimo Uomo. Zach, do you want to add anything else? Want to introduce yourself better?
Yeah, well, I'm currently working just on a variety of functions with Breaking the Lines, which is my website, where we're releasing a lot of quality content every single day. Today we released a scouting report on Liverpool's new signing, Konstantinos Tsimikas, as well as a report on Domenico Berardi, who actually was linked to Inter, I believe, a few years ago. So yeah, we do a bit of everything at Breaking Lines, and we're producing a lot of great content, and we will continue to do so throughout the rest of the year.
Absolutely, I can't wait to read these new articles. Yeah, Berardi was linked with us basically every Windows transfer. So,
Yeah.
but I think at the end of the day, it's gonna stay as a swallow. I don't know. It
Yeah.
seems it's not gonna move. Anyway, I know you don't have so much time, so I want to go straight to the point, and let's talk about this Europa League.
Right.
We are the semifinals, and so we have just four teams left. We have Sevilla against Manchester United on one side, and of course Inter versus Shakhtar. What do you think of these teams and the competition so far?
Been a very exciting competition. It feels like it's been forever since it started, but it's really heating up. I think that yeah, four very good teams, probably the four best teams of the competition. Um, competing for glory in Germany, and I got to say there really isn't a clear favorite for me. Um, I think Sevilla definitely have the value of experience. They have players such as Ever Banega and Fernando, who are well versed in the competition. But at the same time, it's also somewhat of a new look team, right? There are a lot of youngsters such as Sergio Reguilon and um, Yusuf and Nesri, a lot of players to that degree who don't have that much experience, but in general as a team, I think that they've looked very comfortable. They looked very good yesterday against Wolves. Um, I do have some concerns about their ability in the final third. I think that's definitely an area where um, both Inter and Manchester United come up stronger. When you look at teams such as United with Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba leading the way in terms of creativity from midfield, as well as Marcus Rashford and um, Anthony Martial and Mason Greenwood, uh, as well as Inter, who the duo of Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez just looks pretty unstoppable right now. Comparing that to Sevilla's attack, you've got Lucas Ocampos, who's been quite good this season, but I don't think is uh, about on the same level as those others. Uh, Suso, who's been kind of hit and miss so far in the right wing, as well as Luke De Jong and En Nesri started yesterday, but it remains to be seen who will be the starter against against United. I think it will probably be De Jong, but in general, I think that that's the main concern for me with this Sevilla side. Um, yeah, in general, I think it's really anybody's guess for who's gonna win it. I'm not. I wouldn't be too sure. Um, I think that United probably have the best form right now out of any of the four teams. They had a simply incredible run of form over the Premier League's restart. We're nearly perfect in erasing that seemingly insurmountable deficit on Leicester City and sealing third place. Um, but at the same time, it's I feel like looking at some of the final games, some of United's final games during the league season, as well as yesterday's game or this week's game against Copenhagen, which they looked pretty sluggish, I think, in attack. Um, Definitely some signs. I think that the fatigue is could play a factor, and it could cause Sevilla to pull off an upset victory. I think that I've seen a lot of United games over the restart, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has not really rotated that much. Granted, he doesn't have that much depth, but I think as a result, you're going to see players such as Nemanja Matic, Bruno Fernandes, a lot of players who that fatigue, that build up, that fixture congestion is going to play a role in, I think, in decreasing their performances both on a mental and a physical side. So I definitely think that's cause for concern from United's standpoint.
And what do you think is gonna happen on this other side of the table? What do you think of this last game Inter played?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I've seen that much about Shakhtar. So I haven't seen that many Shakhtar games. One player who has impressed me when I've watched him play is Marcos Antonio. The young Brazilian looks very comfortable from midfield role, just kind of exploiting spaces and driving forward. That's I'm not a Shakhtar expert by any means, but that's definitely a player who I think Antonio Conte will want to suppress going forward. Um, as for Inter, though, I mean, I watched the game this week, um, and against Bayer Leverkusen, and I gotta say, just Romelu Lukaku looked simply unstoppable. Um, and I think that it's just incredible what a turnaround he's had since joining Inter. I think that uh, for me, the biggest factor in Lukaku's turnaround has been the weight loss. I remember just watching him at United, and I think not only did he put on too much muscle, which is definitely an issue for it's definitely been an issue for players such as Gareth Bale. When they put on too much muscle and it kind of slows them down and it sort of messes with their abilities. But he also put on too much weight. I think he had too much fat, and obviously that was partially because of a digestive problem that was undiagnosed by United's doctors. But I just got to say, it's been a complete 180 for him. He really looks just so dangerous. And, as much as I would like to see Sevilla go forward to the final, I got to say the possibility of an Inter United final is very tantalizing just because of so many narratives. Looking at Conte having brought in so many ex-United players such as Alexis Sanchez, Romelu Lukaku, Ashley Young. It's definitely an enticing possibility. But yeah, no. As far as Inter go, definitely been it's been a successful season for them, if not sort of controversial because of some things that Conte said in his final press conference after the season. But I'm really excited. I think this Inter project is very promising, and I honestly think it has everything they have everything it takes to beat Juventus and beat them to the Scudetto next season. I predicted that they would win the Scudetto this season. I was wrong, but I do think that with the addition of Achraf Hakimi and I'm gonna assume that Inter sign a left wing back and potentially some other reinforcements this summer. I think that it's going to be their year next year, and I think that there's nothing better than a Europa League triumph to set the tone.
Yeah, so apparently
Right.
we are strongly linked with Tonali in the midfield.
Right.
Reports today were saying that it will be announced right after the end of this competition. I
Right.
don't know if it's so. It's a done deal. I don't believe it until I see it. But what do you think this team is lacking at the moment for actually being at the same level Juventus? Do you think like I don't know? We need a striker. We need a better bench. Do we need a left back, as you were saying?
I think that depth is definitely probably the number one priority for Inter, and in my opinion, the best way to make depth is to sign players who will bench your starters, and so I think that in many ways Inter are either on the same level or better than Juventus. I think that Inter have a much stronger midfield than Juve, even without Tonali signing. If it was up to me, I would sign. I would much rather sign Tonali for 40 million, maybe even 50 million, rather than like swapping Milan Skriniar for Tanguy Ndombele, which I know
Yeah.
has been rumored in the Italian press, and personally, I know that Skriniar has struggled a bit in the back three formation under Conte, but I think that's just very irresponsible, selling a guy who's already done so much at such a young age, and will only get better. Um, Versus a guy such as Ndombele, who, I love. I love that Leon, very fun player to watch, but at the same time, I'm just not really sure if they need him, especially when they have Christian Eriksen, who can, I think, carry the weight in that attacking role. So I would say that, yeah, a midfielder. I think Tonali would be a good fit. Um, Although it remains to be seen. I think that it would be a good fit, partially because Stefano Sensi's injury problems are a bit of a concern. Sensi did very well for Inter at the start of the season, and you could really notice that once he got injured, Inter's form just went off a cliff. So Tonali isn't exactly the same kind of player, but I do think he can fill in that role to a degree. So I think he would be a very shrewd signing for Inter. Aside from Tonali reinforcing midfield, I think they only need to make like one real midfield signing. They're pretty well stacked in other areas. I would also go with a left wing back. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
really sure who. Um, Robin Gosens has been linked from Atalanta, but it's just very hard to adapt to. It's very hard to judge accurately the potential fits of Atalanta players. We actually ran an article on Breaking the Lines a few weeks ago, um, analyzing Atalanta's players who had impressed under Gianpiero Gasperini and who had gone on to sign for bigger clubs. Frank Kessié, obviously one who actually hasn't done too bad at Milan under Stefano Pioli this season, but another Mattia Caldara,
Mm-hmm.
Roberto Gagliardini is another
Yeah.
one who had a pretty good start to his time at Inter, but then just has been pretty bang average. It's hard to judge. So
Yeah.
when you look at a player such as Gosens, who's putting up just incredible numbers for a left wing back position, it's very easy to get tempted and sign him, but definitely an element of caution you have to take with regards to that signing. But I do think that the left wing back position has to be a priority because Ashley Young, he's done fairly well, but I do think that there's a lot of players who can be an upgrade on him.
But
Especially
the
at that
other
age.
name that was linked was Emerson Palmieri from
Yeah.
Chelsea. Do you think
Yeah,
that's
I mean, that's I'm not sure. I think Emerson that makes sense to me because Emerson has some defensive flaws, I think, but I think that playing in a more defensive team, if you will, such as Inter, which would sort of minimize or mask some of his defensive shortcomings, I do think that makes sense. At the same time, Emerson's form and performances have been, gradually declining uh, since since his ACL injury, I believe, and for Roma, and when it was like 2017, I believe. So I can't help but think that Marcos Alonso, if they go for a Chelsea left back, I can't help but think he would make more sense. Um, But yeah, I'm not really sure who Inter should sign in the left wing back spot. I think Gosens definitely an interesting possibility, but you just never know with Atalanta players. It's so hard to gauge their success because playing as a wing back for Gasperini is just so much different than playing as a wing back for Conte. But aside from that, I think they're pretty much set at the goalkeeper position. I think that if they get someone like Tonali, they're set at midfield. I would maybe bring in a target man, like a more physical striker, to
exactly?
compete to give rotation to Lukaku.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you
Yeah,
exactly that. We do have Lautaro and Lukaku in front. We have Sanchez now for
right.
sure, but I think we will need another striker. And if you could pick one striker, one name, who would you pick?
I don't know. I mean, Esposito has Sebastiano Esposito has looked interesting, but I think he probably needs a loan, uh, as well as Andrea Pinamonti. Will probably go out on loan again,
Hmm.
or just be sold. Um, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think Fernando Llorente might be a low cost option. Um, he did fairly well at Tottenham. I know he's not the most exciting option or the best option, but Inter can't afford to spend that much money in that position,
Hmm.
just because of their other needs. Um, but I don't know. I think Llorente would make sense. Artem Jubia from Zenit. I think his contract is expiring this summer,
I'm
so
not sure.
he might be an interesting option. He's done well for Russia before, and he might fancy a move to a top 5 league.
Hmm.
It remains to be seen. I'm not really sure, but Inter can't afford to spend that much money in for a position which Lukaku um, has barely been injured. He's always had a very good injury record, so he's going to play. He's going to start, at least 80-90% of the games.
Hmm.
So you can only spend like, probably 5 million max in that position. You can't afford to dedicate a lot of funds to that position. Um, so in best case, worst case scenario, you just bring back Pinamonti and see how he does. I think, um, but aside from that, target man, left wing back, central midfield reinforcement. Um, I'm not sure there's anything else I would touch. Um,
I do have
maybe center back, but at the same time, I do think that if Skriniar stays with Inter, I think that he will, uh, you know, improve. It's difficult to go from playing in a back three. It's difficult from playing in a back four to a back three. Spalletti's system really benefited his strengths and weaknesses, but he's such a strong, promising center back that I don't think it makes sense to sell him. So I do think that Skriniar, De Vrij, they might bring in another center back if they let go of Godin, but I think it remains to be seen what happens in that aspect. I would just say that left wing back should be their number one priority right now.
And you were mentioning, you said that we're fine in the goalkeeper position. A lot of supporters may disagree with you. Since Andanovic during the season wasn't always the best. I think now is having a good run the last couple of games. But for the future, I think we should try to be prepared. I know you guys wrote a very interesting article about Musa on breaking the lines.
Right.
Do you think it could be an option for us? What other goalkeepers do you think we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, I mean Juan Musso, I think would make sense, but Udinese are reportedly asking for 30 million euros for him this summer, and I think that Inter just have too many. I think that they can win the Scudetto with Handanovic in goal. I don't think that they can win the Scudetto with Ashley Young starting at left wing back or their current just lack of depth. Like I said, I think that the lack of depth is a real concern. And yeah, if you want to learn more about Musso, definitely check out Andrea Agostinelli's article about Musso that we published on Breaking Lines this week. Very informative analysis. Definitely a possibility. I don't think this summer really makes sense, just because, like I said, they have limited financial capacity. But I also would not even. I wouldn't write out Jon Radu as a potential option. I thought Radu actually did very well at Genoa early on in the season, and I was sort of I was just confused, I guess, when they brought in Mattia Perin on loan from Juventus in January, because it just felt like that was the one area where they didn't need to reinforce, but as a result, he left, and I don't know. I think that was just it was just kind of a confusing move from Genoa's standpoint, just because Radu was actually doing quite well for them, and then he left. He went to Parma, where he was, where he didn't start over Sepe, but I think that I just don't think that goalkeeper has to be a priority for Inter. I mean, I think that I think it probably makes sense to bring Radu back as a backup, just because Cadelli is sort of more of a third choice. I trust him more as a third choice than a second choice.
Absolutely.
He's like 35, hasn't really done well when he's been called upon, and I don't think Radu barely played at Parma. I'm not even sure if he played at all, but it makes sense for Radu to log a few games, I think, at the as a backup, in Coppa Italia matches before the club, make a decision what they want to do. What do they sell him? Do they loan him? Do they sell him with a buyback clause? It makes sense for them to at least, give him 5-7 starts for Inter, because I do think he's better than Padelli, and I think that he's done well enough to deserve a chance, at least at the backup position. I know that some people aren't huge fans of Handanovic, but I don't think he's even close to one of Inter's problems right now. You know, he has his shortcomings, but I think that I think that that's an issue that you address in
Mm-hmm.
2021, not 2020. I think that he's more than good enough. I think he's still one
Absolutely.
of the best goalkeepers in Serie A. So I think that you give him a chance, give him another chance, as well as giving Radu a chance as his backup, um, and just see where they go from then. But yeah, if I had to list my priorities for Inter this summer, I would say left wing back probably number one.
Mm-hmm.
Midfield, just because the concerns in terms of depth. Borja Valero, Gagliardini. Uh, there's just a big drop off in quality from the likes of Barella and Eriksson and Sensi,
Brozovic.
who's Brozovic. Obviously, Sensi has had his fair share of injury issues. Um, and so, yeah, I think that someone like Tonali would definitely make a lot of sense. Potentially even a lesser, someone like Manuel Locatelli from Sassuolo
Mm-hmm.
would also make some sense. Even, um, I think Seko Fofana has announced that he wants to seek a move away from Udinese. I think he might even make a
Oh yeah,
decent amount of sense for
I
for
can see
Inter.
him playing for Conte for sure.
Yeah, but I only think that probably one midfield signing is necessary. I mean, they have a decent amount of midfielders already. Lucien Agume is a player who I think has a big future. I'm not sure if he'll realize that potential at Inter, but I think that he's a very promising young
Mm-hmm.
midfielder. Um, but yeah, no, I think Hakimi. I'm very excited by that signing just because it's just such a good fit for him. I think that he can just become a world class player under Conte, and he's just going to, if he can hit the ground running and recover his Dortmund form, I really think that he can. Um, I really think that he can just be so crucial. He can really make the difference
Mm-hmm.
for Inter breaking that. And we actually ran an article a few months ago on Breaking Lines on Inter's wingback issues and why despite Kandreva and Young doing fairly well, um, why there's still such a concern, especially in big games. And that was one of the biggest points of the article is
Yep.
that in big games, uh, their opposing teams always target them, and they almost always let them down. So it's a very interesting article. I recommend all viewers check it out. But
Absolutely.
Hakimi will definitely make a difference in that area. A new left wing back will make a difference. Uh, so aside from left wing back in the midfield position, I would also say a target man is probably necessary. Somebody you can get for within the region of 5 million or so. Somebody who can provide rest for
Mm-hmm.
Lukaku, because if Lukaku gets suspended or injured, there's just nobody who can really fill that role. I know that Giroud was linked. I think Mandzukic. Uh, I'm not sure if he's joining any club. I know that he's been linked with I think Benevento, but I think Mandzukic would actually make a lot of sense if they can get him. That would be a very good signing on a
Mm-hmm.
free. Um, but yeah, I think a target man, um, a left wing back, a midfield reinforcement. Um, I'm not sure they need anything else. Maybe a center back. Um, but at the same time,
Okay.
I think Bastoni is a promising young player, and I don't
Yep.
know. It remains to be seen. I think they might end up just releasing um, Diego Godin or selling
Mm.
him for a minimal amount. It remains to be seen that. But I honestly think that they could win the Scudetto with a back three of Skriniar, De Vrij, and Bastoni.
All right. I have three quick questions. I know we're running out of time, so just really quick. Do you know anything about Asamoah? What happened to that guy? Where is he? What's the problem? Do you know anything about him?
Quadro Asamoah. Um, it's very it's really kind of crazy what happened to him. Just sort of fell off the radar. Um, I wonder if there was like a falling out or something with Conte or with Marotta or
I
if it
mean, it
was
seems fine in the training.
yeah
If you look at the pictures and the teammates,
right
it's always very smiley and it seems happy. I just all I gather was that he had a chronic injury on the knee, I think,
right
but it's just rumors. There was
yeah
no official statement anywhere. So and it just disappeared and
yeah
is
it's a shame to see just because Asamoah has been such a top professional uh, for Juventus and now for Inter. He did a fairly good job, but yeah, I do think that uh, that knee injury that he picked up was kind of definitely probably sentenced him to an early retirement. And now I'm not sure what the club does with him. I would love to see him just get one more Scudetto medal, but I'm not sure. I think that he'll probably end up leaving in the summer transfer window.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame to see because he's always been such a hardworking professional.
All right. Question number two. You can answer just with one simple sentence, or you can go as deep as you want.
All
But
right.
there is these rumors that keep going about Messi and Inter. I personally think it's BS.
Yeah.
But let's say just because this 2020 is crazy, let's
Right.
say is actually coming to Inter. Do you think Messi is a good fit for Conte? Do you think they can think of any way for him to play with Conte?
I mean, I think he's the greatest player of all time. So I think he'd be a good fit,
I agree with that.
anywhere. But I think that if he were to leave, he would definitely make a lot more sense, uh, like at Manchester City, than at Inter. I can't really see him playing anywhere else. If he were to leave, I would think it would be for a reunion with Guardiola. I'm like 95% sure that he stays at Barcelona for another year, and then who knows what happens when his contract is up. But I think that he, if, hypothetically, if he were to join Inter, I would probably think that um, they would sell Ericsson. Uh, and I know that sounds kind of short-sighted, but he hasn't always managed to get into Conte's lineup. He
Mm-hmm.
had somewhat of a tough time adapting. Um, so I mean, and with all due respect to Ericsson, if you have the chance to sign Messi, you do it, and
Absolutely.
that would probably mean Ericsson would be sold for a slight profit. I know they got him on a fairly cheap deal, so they would be able to get a profit on him, and I would probably see him. I would probably see Conte switching from 3-5-2 to a 3-4-1-2. I know he's played both this season, but that would you'd have Messi in the 10 role behind Lukaku and Lautaro, um, and then you'd probably have a midfield of Brozovic and
Barella.
Barella and I don't know, maybe Stensi if he can stay clear of injuries. That would be a very good team. You know
Mm-hmm.
obviously I think that there's no way Juventus with their wage problems and their inability to sign players. That's probably the main reason why they fell out of the race to sign Tonali, as Romeo Agresti is reporting that they have abandoned race and they're probably going to sign. They're probably going to buy back Rolando Mandragora from Udinese. Um, but the fact is they're in a very tough predicament in terms of financials. So I think that I highly doubt that Messi would join Inter. Um, I think that
Yep.
going to Italy, it would make some sense. I just don't think I'm just not sure. I don't know if Inter would be the right fit for him. Personally, I don't know. I think a move to Juventus would make more sense if Ronaldo does leave, which has been rumored. But if he were to leave, I think it would probably be in 2021 or potentially even after that. But, I think, if that were to happen, I think that you would probably see Eriksen being sold and Messi operating in the diamond behind Lukaku and Lautaro.
Copy. Yeah, makes sense. But if one can dream and see a Serie A with Messi versus Ronaldo, Messi at Inter, Ronaldo Juve, and all this stuff, that would be amazing. But it's not gonna happen. We kind of introduced my last question. You start talking about Juventus, and I cannot not ask you what do you think the Pirlo announcement, and do you ever imagine that just a week ago? What do you think? Is this a smart move? It's just out of character for Juventus? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is fairly somewhat out of character for Juventus, just because they've pretty much almost always gone with like a fairly experienced coach. Conte, wasn't incredibly experienced when he joined Juventus, but he definitely had a lot more experience than Pirlo. I mean, I think that, and I touched up on
He
this.
was doing pretty good in Serie B before joining Juve.
Yeah, I touched up on this in a thread that I wrote last week. Zidane, because I think that Juve have always dreamed of hiring either Guardiola or Zidane, and I do think that the Dejan Kulusevski and the Arthur Melo moves sort of hint to the possibility of Guardiola taking over at Juventus in 2021 and 2022, because I just feel like those are two players who are born to play under Guardiola. Their characteristics really fit him like a glove. We'll see what happens with that, but I think that Juve's dream has always been Guardiola or Zidane, and I'm sure they've tried to bring Zidane to the club, but I think that one thing that people, people who think that Pirlo will just automatically come as Zidane, one thing that they're missing is, well, for one, Pirlo still hasn't even completed his coaching courses. I believe I think he'll have to get the.
He can coach in Serie A, but not in Europe. He's gonna
not,
need an assistant in
he
Europe.
needs to get his UEFA licenses. So I think he'll probably have to go back to Coverciano for that.
Yeah, I think
In the
it's
summer.
just missing the last papers. I don't know. He needs to write a papers or two. But yeah.
And I mean that, and there's definitely it does make sense, I think, to appoint a legend. I mean, appoint an ex-player and a legend who, so many of these players, such as Bentancur and Arthur, have, probably grown up idolizing. And, there's definitely, you've seen that with the likes of Frank Lampard and Mikel Arteta, players who haven't really had any experience as a manager, but they've done fairly well. So I do see their logic there. But at the same time, Pirlo has had nowhere near the amount of experience as someone such as Zidane. Zidane was had a wealth of experience before he joined. Before he took perhaps the most demanding job in football. He was he had some experience in the bureaucratic side of things. I think he was an ambassador for Qatar's World Cup bid, I'm pretty sure, and he also was he was also he was the sporting director for Madrid. He helped bring in Varane when he was I think 17 or so. He worked as Mourinho's assistant. I remember I think actually Mourinho is the one who told Florentino, hey, I want Zidane to be here to help connect the first team and the training. He's had experience working under Ancelotti and Mourinho, two of the greatest managers in football history. And in general, he's had a ton of experience working as Castilla manager, obviously. So you can't really compare that. Whether Pirlo becomes another Zidane or not, I think that there's definitely a lot more risk than Zidane taking charge of Madrid, for example. Because of Madrid's clearly better squad than Juventus. Juventus squad is just so poorly organized, and so it was tough enough for Sarri to win it. It's going to be even tougher for Pirlo to win the Scudetto next season. So I do think there's a risk of Pirlo being burnt out. We will see, but the biggest thing that Juve can do right now is sell their overpriced players. They've already did that with Matuidi joining Inter Miami, but it's going to be very difficult for him. I think that there's just a strong chance. I think that Pirlo, gets sacked in 2021 or so, and Guardiola takes over from there. I think that sacking Sarri, it's sort of I can see both sides to it, because on the one hand, Napoli probably had their best season under Sarri in his second season. So there is, I guess, the logic to let Sarri continue for another season and see if we can see if they can adapt. At the same time, Juve's squad was nowhere near as accustomed to joining to basically to adapting Sarri's characteristics, Sarri's automatisms. So when you look at the failure to adapt, and it was a kind of a bizarre decision in the first place, but I don't know. I think that Sarri, it makes sense to get rid of Sarri. It also doesn't make sense to ask the squad to go from Sarri to Guardiola. It makes more sense to have a transitional manager such as Pirlo to kind of bridge the gap. But I gotta say, with 10 Scudetti in a row on the line next season, this seems like a very, very risky move for Juventus to bring in to bring in someone like Pirlo, who's had practically no experience whatsoever, or practically no experience even mentoring himself under a top manager such as Ancelotti or Mourinho. It's just incredibly risky, and we'll see what happens. But when you go up against managers such as Simone Inzaghi, such as even Gattuso, managers who have a decent amount of experience, we're just gonna have to see how Pirlo can match up to them. That's gonna take a lot of him. And we'll see what happens. But I do think
not only that, but I think as a character, as a person, I don't know how he can deal in the locker room with other players. I know he was one of them, just
right.
in the recent past,
I think he'll have more success in that regard than Sarri, personally, because I think that Pirlo will try to probably keep things simple. I know he's spoken about going for a 4-3-3. I think Juve are probably better suited playing a 4-3-1-2. It depends on where he sees Kulusevski playing, but I think he'll have a better chance in that regard of getting the locker room on his. And, it really depends, I think, on his. It's hard to make predictions just because we have no idea what Pirlo is, but I mean, the motivational factor is so important, because Zidane, that's one thing, and I think that he's actually come a long ways in terms of his tactical ability. I think that especially this season is where we really started to see just how good of a tactician he is. But the motivational factor, the ability to we saw so many Real Madrid games where Madrid were down a goal or two, and Zidane just had the ability to really get his players to go to war for him.
Correct.
Like he was Diego Simeone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that
I just
passion,
really,
that
I just have no idea if Pirlo has that same kind of grinta, that sort of
yeah.
motivational ability to. Because I've got to say, I've seen a lot of Juventus games this season where it just looked like the players were just sleepwalking through the
Mm-hmm.
matches, and
Yeah.
just took a moment of individual brilliance from Dybala or Ronaldo to save them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think that Juve are going to be very hamstrung in the transfer market. Assuming they buy Mandragora, they buy back Mandragora. I think that. I mean, I think the biggest priority for them, two biggest priorities for them will be getting a center forward. I know that Milik has been mentioned as an option,
Mm-hmm.
um, and as well as I think getting someone a midfielder who can link midfield with attack. I think Zaniolo would be a good option, but I'm just not sure if they have
But
the funds to bring him in.
today's rumors was that they will try to sell Dybala to finance the rest of their
Yeah, that just
campaign, which
seems
in my mind, is just
would just
insane.
be yeah.
But
There's no attacking midfielder who Juve can afford that is good enough that is worth selling Dybala, with all due
exactly.
respect. But yeah, I mean, it's just Juve have sort of dug themselves into this hole, and I mean, 10 in a row is massive. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, like, I don't know, they're gonna have a very difficult time. Whatever happens next season, they're gonna have a very difficult time, like, making the squad competitive for 21-22. Just because Ronaldo, I think, is entering his final year of his contract, so may have to end up selling him. On the other hand, you'll have a bunch of players coming off the wage bill, such as Higuain. So ideally try to sell. But yeah, Juve have really dug themselves into this hole. I actually wrote a long thread on this in August of last year about their wage situation, how it sort of
Mm-hmm.
crippled them financially.
Yeah.
They really just don't have any leeway, as opposed to Inter, who have actually maintained somewhat of a healthy wage bill. I don't think there are many players who are like having this sort of like Khedira or Ramsey like
Yeah.
impact
No.
on the wage bill. So that's definitely one thing where Inter have actually probably outsmarted Juve in recent years, because you think that bringing in someone like Rabiot or Ramsey is a smart move until it's 2020 or 2021, and you can't find a buyer for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, in summary, I think that the Pirlo move, uh, I think the success of Pirlo, I'm gonna assume that he has a fairly experienced assistant manager by his side to help guide the team through the tactics. But I think that the main thing that hinges on his success, and he's not really responsible for what happens in the transfer market, but what's the main thing that hinges on his success is that motivational factor.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just gonna have to wait and see with that regard how good of a motivator he is.
Yeah, I wasn't able to value in this week the under 23.
Yeah, it's it's an extremely risky move, especially with 10 in a row on the line. I can't really say that Sadi has done much to deserve getting another season, but that being said, bringing in Pirlo, it's just incredibly risky. It's fairly cheap. I'm sure his salary
Mm-hmm.
is not quite what
Yeah.
Sadi was making, but uh, when with historic achievements such as 10 in a row on the line, it's just incredibly risky, and we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happened. And Zach, this was amazing. That was way more than I was hoping for. So I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.
And for you listeners, now you know why I was so excited. And if you want to read more, you can find Zach articles on Breaking the Lines and in a lot of other places, actually. Zach is on Twitter. Do you want to plug anything? Any new articles or anything else?
No, I just follow BTL Vid on Twitter, where we've released a ton of engaging Serie A articles lately. Where we've got a tactical analysis on Stefano Pioli's Milan coming up. We recently published an article on Conte's Inter. So we have we got an article on Ivan Juric's Hellas Verona coming up. So we're going to be releasing a lot more Serie A content as the summer progresses. So just keep an eye on that.
Awesome. Zap, thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Take care.